Hey everyone, it's Jack and Clayton, and this video is about he's pulled away and what do you do? So I just want to kind of acknowledge off the bat here that if this is happening to you right now or has happened to you, it's probably been really painful.
Yeah.
That you may be confused, you may be doubting yourself, you may feel kind of anxious about when you might get together or come back into connection. And also just in kind of full self-disclosure, as a guy, I've definitely done this and I still do it in my relationship. So this is territory that we know from kind of from the male side of the fence.
Yep.
And so in this video, we're hoping to give you some perspectives about how to orient to a man when this is happening that might just serve you to feel more empowered, to feel less in pain, and to kind of feel more okay about the relationship.
Yeah, and about where it's going and what might be happening in his mind. I can tell you hands down that when a man pulls away, it doesn't always mean that he doesn't want anything to do with you anymore.
Totally.
Right? Or that he's ghosting you, or that he's just disappeared and he's left you high and dry. It does not always mean that. In some cases, it absolutely does. Right?
I think that's what makes this difficult territory,
exactly,
right? Because if you're feeling anxious, you're probably trying to work out, like, is this kind of over?
Right.
Did I do something wrong?
Right.
Or is he just kind of taking some space?
Yes.
And if he hasn't communicated that, which oftentimes as men, again, I'll take responsibility, is we don't necessarily communicate on the front end, right? Like, I'm taking some space because I need 2 days of rest. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. So you are a little in the dark about what his actual intentions are.
Yeah, and it also depends too on the phase of the relationship and the dating of like where you're at in the timeline.
Right.
Right. Is this the beginning stages where perhaps you've had a couple of dates with him and now you're noticing he's pulling away and he's not calling? And the question that I have there is, well, do you have a deep connection, or do you have a connection enough with him that there is actually something that he's pulling away from, or is it just that the dating has lost momentum for him and he just is not communicating that? That's a very different scenario than saying being in a relationship with somebody and there's perhaps love and there's a lot of feelings. Maybe there's some volatility and then suddenly he pulls away there, right? There's different ways of handling this and different ways of approaching it. But then there are some, I'd say, underlying principles of how to be in this situation that would ultimately, both of them will create anxiety within you, right? So it's kind of like, how do you manage your anxiety? How do you enter into this situation to create the best possible result?
Totally.
Yeah.
So maybe we should get into those principles.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so the first one is don't take it personally.
As hard as that is. Yeah.
Which is to say that it might be much more about him than it is about you. Right? That he actually has a need for some space, for some autonomy. You know, we were talking the other day, we went out for dinner, and you were saying there's a reason we have a man cave, right? That's like across all sorts of cultures.
It's like a stereotype that a man has a man cave.
Man needs to kind of cave up. He needs to get kind of silent, kind of empty himself, be free of distractions, and that's one of his ways of recharging. Because again, the main masculine dynamic is action and rest, right? Go out into the world, then retreat to the man cave.
Yeah.
So it might be that he's withdrawn just to rest. So the invitation not to take it personally, which we sometimes call like be cool, right? Like kind of be cool with him, like don't criticize, blame, judge, kind of be non-judgmental, and actually be curious. So before you create a story that this is about you, or it's about a thing that you've done, or it's about something that's wrong in the relationship, actually be curious about his experience. And it may be that you have to wait to actually find out the answers to that, right? It may be that you have to wait out a little bit of time for him to be available to come back into connection to even talk to you about that. Yeah,
definitely. And that's another key point too, is that if there's going to be any conversation about this, it's not that you have to put up or tolerate it, right? If there's a lack of communication on his part, if there is more planning that you would like, if there's more communication in terms of what's happening before he's taking space and you need that, wait till he comes back and then have a conversation about the impact that it had on you.
Right.
From a place of owning it and letting him know how he felt. And I'll tell you, here's the wild thing. As being a guy on this side of the fence, I don't even know sometimes when I'm having a negative impact on somebody.
Right.
Right. It is up to my woman to reveal to me when she is feeling a certain thing, because I might be ignorant, and I'm a relationship coach. right? And I mean, this even somebody who has studied this stuff can very well be ignorant about these nuances about how they come across and the impact they have. So being able to communicate it is incredibly important.
Yeah, and notice there, Clayton's talking about impact rather than intention, right? So you're feeding back, what's the impact? You took some space, here's the impact on me, rather than you have a bad intention because you took space.
Right, why are you abandoning me?
Totally,
You always do this to me.
Right,
yeah.
So just notice the difference there. If you can fully own your experience and be like, wow, that was really hard for me, and I felt alone, I felt anxious, I wasn't sure what was going on. That's so much easier for the guy to hear than I'm in a blame orientation towards you.
Yeah.
So it segues nicely to the second one here, which is about learning how to make requests versus making demands.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when a man does something you don't like, your tendency might be to criticize him, blame him, cajole him, manipulate him, pressure him. All sorts of kind of underhand tactics, if you will, rather than cleanly ask for what is it that you want, which could be, hey, when you take space and we come back into connection, it would really benefit me if you could just hold me for 5 minutes, right? That would allow me to feel connected to you again. Or if you're going to take space of more than 1 or 2 days, I would love to know that just in a quick text or call me or whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And the way that you know that it's a request rather than a demand is that I can say yes or no to your request.
Yeah.
We might negotiate or we might come to a better compromise or better adjustment. But making a request is he gets to say yes or no to what it is that you're asking.
And this is so important because if you don't do this, what often happens is you stuff it, is one will stuff it, and it'll turn into some type of passive-aggressive behavior.
And resentment.
And resentment, right. And it could be that all of a sudden he takes space and then you find yourself thinking that his intention is somehow to punish you.
Right.
And then you might start to resort to punish him, which creates this horrible unconscious cycle of passive-aggressiveness within the relationship, which doesn't bring the two of you closer. And then just further gives him perhaps more of a reason and more energy for wanting to take more space now because he can't handle it.
Yeah.
So it just perpetuates as something that you don't want. And that's why being able to clearly express the impact that it's having on you and then being able to make a request of how you would like him to enter this space differently is super important.
Totally. Which is great because that actually brings us into point 3. So point 3 has a little bit of a fancy word in it, right? So point 3 is don't subjectify him. And what that fancy word subjectify means is don't imagine that when he does something, he does it with the same way that you would do that thing or with the same intention that you would do that thing. So typically, as a woman, if you're pulling away from your man, it's actually something different than when a man is pulling away from you.
Yeah.
Because your need for space and autonomy and rest may be different to his need.
Yeah.
So it might be that you have a pattern that when someone really upsets you, you create a little bit of a wall, maybe like a stone wall, and you withdraw and you pull away. And that's actually a kind of defense. And that may or may not be happening with him. Right? So it's almost like don't assume that you know what's going on. Get curious and don't imagine that the thing that would be true for you is true for him. And the way I'll explain this is an example that's often given of if a man and a woman are in a car and there's no conversation happening, it may be, and it's a huge generalization here, but it may be that different things are going on. If a man is in a car with you and you're not talking, he may just be in his own world and taking some space, and it's actually nothing to do with you. There's no problem, there's no issue with you. But if you were taking a car journey with a man and you weren't talking with him, it might be that you actually had an issue with him or you didn't like him.
Yeah.
Right? Again, gross generalization. But I'm using it to make the point that the thing he does and the thing you do don't necessarily have the same intentions, and you've got to dig deeper to find out what's true.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm reflecting on my own experience and also of the many men that I've talked to that are in these situations where they're beginning to date a woman or they're in a relationship and it's starting to get serious. One of the ways that men will test women is by pulling away.
Right.
And that's like, should you be testing your partner? Well, look, I can't get into the morality of it, but this actually does happen because it's what allows us sometimes to really get the authentic expression of who that person is. How do they show up in that situation? So I have a friend in particular who admitted to me that, and this is a very conscious guy, and he's like, sometimes I will, when I'm getting to know somebody, I find myself just pulling away because I need to know whether she's going to flip out and be in reactivity, and whether I am allowed
Do you have a right to autonomy?
Right. Do I have a right to be in my autonomy? And I can ask her, oh, can I be my own person in this relationship? And will you honor that? And they can say yes all day long.
Yeah.
But how does her emotional system actually show up in that situation? Does she freak out? Does she start blaming? Does she start punishing? Does she start withdrawing? Does she come back and accuse me and try to control? And all this reveals so much about who you are. So who you show up as in the presence of this happening says so much about you to the guy. And that's why we want to continue to just say it's really important to be cool. And that doesn't mean minimize your needs.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. And this is where
it doesn't mean that you don't reveal the impact.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that you don't get support maybe elsewhere.
Right.
Like maybe you need some support outside of the relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not being a martyr.
Right.
But it's also not over-personalizing something that could actually serve you more, to take a little less personally.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, if you enjoyed this video, and it's,
you should spend some more time with us. You're probably wondering, how could you do that? Have you any ideas?
Well, we do have a webinar, and it's called the three.
Great idea.
I know, right? We just created it. Well, actually, a little while back, but it's called the 3 Keys to Creating.
Not creating.
Attracting. The 3 keys to attracting and keeping a high quality man. And it's some of the best content that we've put together in the last year, I'd say.
Yeah,
it's
we've
90
had some
minutes.
People really impressed, I think.
Yeah. We had some people watch it several times actually and continue to get value from it. So the link to register for a time that works for you is below this video.
And how much is it?
It's free.
Free.
It's absolutely free.
Did you give it away for free?
We're giving it away for free. You know, we may start charging money for it at some point, but right now it's free.
Okay, well, you want to take advantage of that. Go ahead, click that link, find a time that works for you in your time zone, and we will see you there.
See you there.